Hello and welcome. It's Wednesday, the 9th of April. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The leaders of South Korea and Australia sign a free trade agreement and agree to boost security cooperation. A major leadership change may surface in North Korea, which opens its first Supreme People's Assembly meeting since Kim Jong-un took the helm in 2011. Plus, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry accuses Russia of spurring separatist unrest in eastern Ukraine and says Moscow should back down or face new sanctions. Our top story this morning, Korea and Australia have signed a free trade agreement and agreed to boost security cooperation. Under the trade deal, inked Tuesday by President Park Geun-hye and visiting Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, Korea is expected to export more auto parts and import more agricultural products from Australia. Chae Yu-sun has the details.
Less than a month after concluding a trade deal with Canada, Korea signed its 11th FTA with Australia. Seoul and Canberra agreed to remove tariffs on a majority of traded goods over the next decade.
Is that it will be very good for both our countries because trade means jobs, freer trade means more jobs. Freer trade not only means more jobs, but it means better friendships.
President Park Geun-hye talked about the great potential for energy and resources development cooperation by merging Korea's advanced technology with Australia's vast resources. But their meeting wasn't just about economic ties. The two leaders also adopted a vision statement in which they agreed to discuss a blueprint for security and defense cooperation.
에벗 총리와 저는 영내 안보 지형이 급변하고 있는 상황에서 외교, 안보 분야에서 공조 강화가 중요하다는 데 의견을 같이 하고
Australia also expressed support for President Park's trust-building and reunification initiatives with North Korea, while calling on Pyongyang to put down its nuclear arms and to abide by its previous denuclearization commitments. The vision statement also referred to Seoul and Canberra's joint efforts towards regulatory reforms and streamlining red tape. Similar to President Park's deregulation drive, the Abbott administration has pushed for reform measures such as holding a massive repeal day twice a year to boost Australia's competitiveness and to create more jobs. On people-to-people exchanges, the two leaders agreed to actively support Koreans visiting Australia on working holiday visas and Australians coming to study in Korea as part of Canberra's New Colombo plan. Chae Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now that the trade pact between two of Asia's largest economies is a done deal, import tariffs on most of their products are expected to be eliminated within the next 10 years. And Na Hyung-kyung takes a look at which sectors are expected to benefit most from the Korea-Australia FTA and which ones will take a hit.
Korea's trade ministry expects the free trade agreement between Seoul and Canberra to bring about $1.6 billion worth of benefits to consumers within the 10-year period after the pact is ratified. Korea's chief FTA negotiator Woo Tae-hee says Korea's small and mid-sized businesses especially will reap the benefits.
Australia has very high trade volumes with Asian countries. Therefore, competition among Asian nations is fierce within the Australian market. This FTA will help our SMEs gain a competitive edge in the exports market to Canberra.
Australia has agreed to remove tariffs on 99.5% of their items within 5 years of the deal's ratification. The Korean government evaluates this as one of its most ideal and complementary free trade pacts. Its reasoning is that Korean manufacturing goods, automobiles, and petroleum products, for example, will see a boost in exports, while Australian mineral resources, including crude oil, will benefit from tariff removals. But those opposing the deal remain concerned about its effect on Korea's agricultural industry, as tariffs currently ranging from 18 to 72% on meat products will be eliminated 10 to 15 years down the road. Along with the recently agreed FTA with Canada, the Trade Ministry says it plans to continue closely working with agricultural professionals to come up with more comprehensive measures that will minimize any negative impact this deal could have on the nation's domestic sector. 나현경, 아리랑 뉴스, 세종.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, North Korea will open its first Supreme People's Assembly meeting under the leadership of Kim Jong-un on this Wednesday. The country's highest legislative body will appoint officials for government posts and deliberate on this year's budget plan. The Assembly could reveal some major personnel or policy changes following the purge of Kim Jong-un's close aides last year, including his uncle Jang Song-taek, who was once the second most powerful man in the country. There's also a focus on what message Pyongyang will send out amid the recent escalation of tensions with South Korea and the US. A total of 687 officials were elected last month during the North's rubber stamp parliamentary elections. The US government has asked Congress to approve the sale of scores of advanced US missiles to South Korea. The US Defense Security Cooperation Agency said Tuesday that it has notified Congress of a possible sale of missiles, equipment and parts to Seoul. South Korea plans to buy 76 Sidewinder Block 2 all-up-round missiles and 32 captive air training missiles at a cost of around $100 million to help counter threats from North Korea. The missiles are manufactured by the world's largest missile manufacturer, Raytheon. Explaining the sale to Congress, the US agency noted that South Korea intends to use the missiles to strengthen its homeland defense and deter regional threats. Now, South Korea and the United States are calling on Japan to share the content of its intergovernmental talks with North Korea. Officials in Tokyo, from Tokyo and Pyongyang have been discussing a number of issues, including the repatriation of Japanese nationals abducted by Pyongyang in the 1970s and 80s. Sources privy to this week's trilateral talks in Washington say the South Korean and US nuclear envoys don't want Japan to make secret two-way contact with North Korea. This after the Japanese envoy told them how the discussions have been progressing. South Korea and the US are reportedly concerned the Japan-North Korea talks could make it more difficult to pressure Pyongyang over its nuclear program. Tokyo says it just wants to speed up the repatriation of its nationals. North Korea and Japan held their first government-level talks in more than a year at the end of last month. China and the United States have faced off over Beijing's territorial claims in the East China Sea. While Washington's defense chief spoke out against China's increasing assertiveness in the region, his Chinese counterpart warned his country was prepared to use its military if it feels threatened. Yulian reports.
In a clear display of the underlying tensions between the two world superpowers, the defense chiefs of China and the United States on Tuesday exchanged some sharp words on territorial disputes. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel denounced Beijing's declaration of an air defense zone over the East China Sea that includes the disputed islands known as Diaoyu in China and Senkaku in Japan.
Every nation has a right to establish air defense zones, but not a right to do it unilaterally. That adds to tensions, misunderstandings, and could eventually add to and eventually get to dangerous conflict.
Hagel added that in case of conflict with Japan, the United States will protect its ally as laid out by its treaty obligations. China's defense minister fired back, saying Beijing stands ready to assemble its military to protect its territory.
I'd like to reiterate that the territorial sovereignty issue is China's core interest. On this issue, we will make no compromise, no concession, no trading. Not even a tiny bit of violation is allowed.
Chang also said the U.S. should not be permissive or supportive of Tokyo. China-U.S. relations have been under strain since Beijing unilaterally declared its air defense zone last year. Prior to his trip to Beijing, Defense Secretary Hagel expressed support for Japan's claims to the disputed territory in the East China Sea. Yulian, 아리랑 뉴스.
Said that a team of South Korean...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Korea's newly established opposition party is already backtracking on one of its main pledges, namely abolishing the party nomination system, which it says is a breeding ground for bribery and corruption. The party now says it will finalize its decision within this week after taking account the votes of party members and public opinion. Connie Kim reports.
Korea's main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, has said it'll reconsider a previous pledge to abolish its party nomination system ahead of the June local elections. Speaking to press on Tuesday, An Chol-soo, co-leader of the newly formed opposition party, said his coalition would make a final decision after taking into equal account votes by party members and public opinion. It's a shift from the main opposition party's original stance. It had previously said it was going to do away with the party nomination system completely, as it can be a breeding ground for bribery and corruption. Both the ruling Saenuri Party and the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy pledged to scrap the party-centered nomination systems during the 2012 presidential campaign. But the ruling party retreated from its pledge earlier this year, adopting instead a bottom-up nomination system that involves both members of the party and the public. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy is expected to make a final decision on the nomination system this week. An's announcement comes one day after the presidential office of Cheongwade turned down his request to meet with President Park Geun-hye for talks on scrapping their top-down systems. The ruling party criticized the opposition party, accusing it of playing politics with the issue and overturning numerous pledges. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, in economic news, Korea's aviation industry has taken off in recent years, with local firms winning contracts with countries as far and wide as Peru, Indonesia and Turkey. Using these past deals as momentum, the Korean government wants to kick things up a notch, as our Kwon So-ah reports.
The nation's aviation industry plans to reach higher ground in the future by putting more of an emphasis on exports. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy unveiled an aviation export industrialization strategy on Tuesday, with an ultimate goal of becoming one of the 7 most advanced nations in the sector. The goal is to expand exports from the $3.6 billion reached in 2013 to $20 billion by 2020. To make it happen, a customized financial system for the aviation industry will be set up. This would include designating the industry as a subject of trade insurance and promoting and attracting private capital. Also, a total of $460 billion will be funneled into manufacturing new aircraft models for export through 2020. Joint research and development with the military is to be expanded as well. Vice Trade Minister Kim Jae-hong also put emphasis on developing unmanned aerial vehicles to catch up to countries advanced in the industry. Tilt rotors, unmanned aircraft that can take off and land vertically, will be included. The government also has an eye on winning overseas contracts with Boeing and Airbus to manufacture parts for their aircraft, worth around $11.5 billion in the next 3 years. To enhance competition and discuss areas that require improvements, a special task force will be established that will pinpoint 5 specific policies to help things get off the ground. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
So as we can see there, the local aviation industry is making its mark on the world stage, but it's not alone. Korean automakers are also basking in their own success. Korean car exports soared in March, nearing a record high set last December. Song Ji-son reports.
Demand is picking up in advanced markets for more expensive Korean vehicles. That was the driving force behind the nation's second highest monthly tally for exports of automobiles in March. According to Trade Ministry on Tuesday, auto exports last month came to nearly $4.7 billion, just $500 million short of the record set just 4 months earlier. This, thanks to overseas demand for high value-added cars like large sedans and recreational vehicles. Orders for SUVs surged more than 26% from a year ago, a hint that the U.S. economy may be on the road to recovery. On the other hand, subcompact and small-sized cars saw relatively weaker growth. All indicators, including production, domestic and overseas sales, marked strong growth compared to the same month last year. Domestic consumer sentiment picked up with the launch of new models, and sales of imported cars also spiked 30% from last year to represent 11% of the domestic market share. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
The Korean job market seems to be picking up ahead of steam, adding around 650,000 new jobs last month compared to the previous year. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that the total number of employed people in Korea in March stood at over 25 million. The agency attributed the rise to the steady economic recovery we've witnessed after a long-term slump. Job creation, however, slowed from the previous month's 835,000 gain. That was the largest on-year job growth since March 2002. And now time for a look through our international headlines. For that, we turn over to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice. Now, tensions in Ukraine are ratcheting up to new levels, it seems, with Washington now accusing Russia of stoking the separatist unrest in eastern Ukraine.
Hi, Mark. That's right. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry now coming out to say it's clear Russian special forces and agents are behind the scenes of this unrest that could potentially be a contrived pretext for a Crimea-style military intervention. He told Moscow to back down or face tougher new sanctions that would target Russia's banking, energy, mining, and arms sectors. This ahead of a pre-scheduled meeting next week with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov to find a solution to the ongoing tensions. Russia, for its part, is threatening a civil war if Kiev uses force to quell the revolts in these eastern cities. Ukraine's Interior Ministry says 70 people have been arrested in anti-terrorist operations in its northeastern city of Kharkiv. This as protesters occupying a government building in Donetsk are declaring a People's Republic of Donetsk and planning a referendum for secession to join the Russian Republic. And relatedly, the International Monetary Fund has slashed Russia's GDP growth forecast by 2/3 to 1.3% from an earlier 2% and warned of a deeper economic fallout should the crisis in Ukraine escalate. The IMF forecast follows gloomier estimates from the World Bank and Russia's own economy ministry, which earlier this month said growth could come significantly below the 1% mark if current trends continue. The IMF has also revised down its growth outlook for the global economy by 0.1% to 3.6%, citing uncertainties in emerging markets in the midst of weak recovery. It, however, left the 2014 growth forecast for the Korean economy unchanged at 3.7%. The first estimates of the cost of the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 are out, and it's on track to become the most expensive in aviation history. Reuters estimates that at least $44 million has been spent in the first month of the hunt by 4 of the 26 countries contributing assets. That's Australia, China, the U.S., and Vietnam. The estimate is about equivalent to the total cost spent in the 2-year search for Air France Flight 447, which crashed into the Atlantic Ocean in 2009. The leaders of Australia and Malaysia have said time and time again that cost is not an issue in the search. Over 186 million voters will head to the polls on this Wednesday in Indonesia's key legislative elections. More than 6,600 candidates from 15 political parties are vying for the 560 parliamentary seats up for grabs. The general election precedes presidential elections that will take place in 3 months' time. Early opinion polls show the opposition Democratic Party could lead the race thanks to the popularity of presidential candidate and Jakarta Governor Joko Widodo. The results of the election could bring major changes to the world's third largest democracy as it recovers from military rule 16 years ago.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off in rhythmic gymnastics, where Son Yeon-jae is soaking in the recent success at the Lisbon World Cup. And the International Gymnastics Federation made her achievements known. Now, the 20-year-old rhythmic gymnast who won 4 gold medals at the Lisbon World Cup made the front pages of the International Gymnastics Federation's website as they stated that her finish in Lisbon was quote-unquote historic. Meanwhile, Son Yeon-jae stated that she gained more muscle mass this season as many people noticed that she's gotten bigger this season. And moving over to the 2013-2014 V-League Awards ceremony, which took place on Tuesday, and some history being made as well. Now, first off, over on the men's side, Samsung Blue Fangs' Leo Martinez received 26 out of 28 votes, winning his second straight league MVP. And with that, he becomes the first player to win back-to-back MVP. Meanwhile, over on the women's side, IBK Alto setter Lee Hyo-hee receives 15 out of 28 votes, becoming the first setter in league history to win the Women's V-League MVP. And now moving over to Tuesday night's KBO action as the Hanwha Eagles beat the NC Dinos 6-2 with the Kia Tigers cruising past the Nexen Heroes 13-9, and the LG Twins and the Lotte Giants tying 2-2 after 12 innings of play. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the first place SK Wyverns take on the Tucson Bears. Of course, going into the game here, first inning with men on first and second for Park Jong-gun, and he singles to center and it's 1-0 SK Wyverns. Third inning, man on third, 1 man out, Min Byung-hun flies out to right. A sac fly makes it 1-1. Now it's a pitcher's duel the rest of the way as Chris Volstead pitches 7 innings, giving up just 1 run on 5 hits, with Yoon Hee-sang also pitching 7 innings, giving up 1 run on 6 hits. But in the 8th inning, men on first and third, Park Jong-gun drills this pitch to right center, and a Superman catch by Chung Soo-bin, and it's still 1-1. Bottom of the inning, Ko Young-min pinch hits, and this one is a sac fly, scoring Min Byung-hun from third, and Tucson has the lead 2-1. 9th inning drama this time, 2 out, bases loaded, and a full count for Cho Dong-hwa, and he drills this pitch right at Chung Soo-bin, and the ball game's over. Tucson holds on to win it 2-1. And now shifting over to Game 5 of the KBL Championship Series between the Changwon LG Sakers and the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus, with the series tied 2-2. Of course, going into the game here, LG takes a slim 24-23 lead after the first quarter before Mobis rallies in the second quarter, take a 39-36 lead going into halftime. Both teams neck and neck in the second half of the game, with Moon Tae-young putting up 24 points and 7 rebounds on the night. But it's Rod Benson who comes to the rescue with a game-saving block and rebound as Mobis hangs on to take Game 5, 66-65. And staying in basketball, but over in the NCAA Men's Basketball National Championship as the 7th seed UConn took on the 8th seed University of Kentucky. Huge game from UConn Shabazz Napier, who puts up 22 points and 6 rebounds on the night as he helps his school beat University of Kentucky 60-54. And with the win, it's UConn's second national championship in 4 years as his school bounces back from several problems just a few years back. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
What a foggy morning that we woke up to, but at least it's not a dust that's covering up the skies. And those layers of fog should burn off as we go through the day, and it will turn to mostly sunny skies. But the atmosphere remains dry. A dry weather watch is still in place across much of the peninsula, so be sure to drink water frequently for your skin and to stay hydrated. So a chilly start to the morning will turn to early summer-like conditions. This afternoon, it will be warmer than yesterday, making big temperature gaps. So please take good care of yourself not to get sick. And it seems like warm and mostly sunny skies will persist throughout the week, but there is a chance of showers down south on Saturday into Sunday. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in the capital started at 7, but it will rise to 20, while Daegu gets up to 26, and Gwangju and Busan should top out at 23 and 21 respectively. Now for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will peak at 17 and 23, and Mount Gyeongbuk should see a high of 15 this afternoon. Well, that's all for now, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Jian, and that's all for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. In the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, arirang.co.kr/news.